Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am joined by someone I started following on Twitter. As you guys know, I just joined about 2 weeks ago. And I started following this gentleman when I caught his a certain article about cult of personalities. And then he was requested by two different people for me to have on. So ladies and gentlemen, tonight I'm going to be speaking with Teodrose Fikre, and he is awesome. He's a journalist. He has a publication called Ghion.
The Ghion
Is that how you say it? Journal. Look it up on Facebook, or excuse me, on Twitter, because his articles just speak to me. They're pretty damn savage. And you know, I don't credit that many people with that word since it's my name. So, so anyway, welcome so much. Thank you for being here. You're amazing. I can't wait to talk to you.
Thank you for having me, Joy. One of the things I love about independent journalism is the fact that we kind of connect with other like-minded thinkers. There's an interview I had with Lee Camp last year, and he was talking about how independent journalists could succeed, and it's by doing this, connecting and collaborating as much as possible, and that way we could kind of break through the echo chamber. So I appreciate you having me on as well. I look forward to this discussion.
Absolutely. I love to interact with other independent media, and how freaking proud are you that you are independent media after this clusterfuck of this past week?
Yeah. Not only this week, it's just the more you take off the blinders of what captivated me about politics for such a long time, the more you realize how much hypocrisy is baked into the system. And it's not just politicians. There's a whole industry of, it's like the synergy between politicians, pundits, media personalities, think tanks. All of them kind of, it's like an incestuous relationship where they continuously lie and perpetuate deception upon the people. And so for us on the outside, even though it's hard to get our voices heard sometimes and overcome the like I said, the echo chamber that's so loud and so overbearing. It's good to be on the outside. It's like being David against Goliath, and it's better to be on the outside speaking truth to power than to be paid by power and pretend like you're actually fighting injustice when you're a part of injustice. So we might not get noticed by too many people, but the ones that notice us, it makes it worthwhile.
Hell yeah, absolutely. That, on that topic, of course, everyone's tweeting and posting about Pago. That's, right. Today they're back today. Well, speaking of what you just said, today, first day, a lot of these people who were elected, it was essentially their first day on the job, and sellout galore.
Right,
I mean,
right.
It was just, and I'm not surprised. One person surprised me, but I mean, so have you ever been duped? I've only been duped by two people.
Oh yeah, big time.
You have?
2008 was for me
that was a dupe
of them all. It wasn't even.
Yeah, that's true.
I was a bamboozle and a hoodwink and a duping all combined into one. In fact, for me, that was kind of where I started to take off the blinders and realized that both parties are really the same thing. They just have different marketing plans to reach out to their constituents in different ways, but at the end, the result is the same. And so you talk about the Pago thing, for example. It's funny how when it comes to military contractors, when it comes to all kinds of money interests that get all kinds of money, the spigot is open. It never runs out. But the minute it comes to things that we care about as people, whether it's, affordable insurance or any of the things. By the way, it's not just people on the left side of the spectrum that get duped all the time. Republicans get duped too. They tell them, the whole build a wall thing, it's just nothing but a scam to get people that are enveloped by fear and xenophobia to cater to them. And they knew that was never going to get built. It's still not going to get built. So, there was no way you could build a border from California all the way through Texas. There's not any amount of money and technology that could build that big of a wall. But it helps to perpetuate the scam. But yeah, the minute that it comes to issues that people on the left or progressives are passionate about. All of a sudden they want to do pay-go. It was never pay-go for the nearly $1 trillion that we spent annually on weapons of mass destruction, on armaments. But when it comes to actually curing people, now all of a sudden we want to be pay-go, and it's preposterous. But it's
really
politics,
is. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of interviewing Congressman Ro Khanna 3 times, and the last time he was on about 2 weeks ago, we were discussing pay-go, and he's vehemently against it. He voted against it today. But, he was telling me, there are people in Congress who really want this. Oh, yeah. And he didn't understand why. And I didn't understand why. And then so you take those, and then also the people who just totally have no backbone. What do you think about people who try to rationalize and say, well, they voted for it because it was going to pass anyway?
Well, I mean, it's limited imagination. It's always easy to say, it can't be done, and then so therefore it won't be done. If we thought like that, the biggest advancements throughout history would never happen. But people that are vested in the status quo, that pretend to be about change, but really they're invested in what the current system is about, will always use that to justify, well, let's just be pragmatic. Let's just be rational about what we could get done. And really that just means let's just stay with what we have. The same brokenness that led to Trump, the same brokenness that keeps leading us to all kinds of wars and enriching the 1% at the cost of the rest of us, that is the status quo. And so when they keep talking about, well, let's be rational, let's be pragmatic, that is their way of saying, let's keep intact what we have today. And by the way, the reason that they want to keep that intact is because there is a profit to be made. As long as there's injustices, as long as there's social issues and divides and wedge issues, there's all kinds of industries and cottage industries that are making tens of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, off it. Every time Trump says something outrageous, the first ones to send out tweets and emails about asking for money are his opponents, because there's money to be made, and that's why he does it. That's why the opposite side does it. And so, really, at the end of the day, it becomes about a money hustle, and the issues that we really care about are not going to change until we figure out a way to get. For me, it's kind of hard to understand exactly what the solution is, because even that seems to be impossible. Because how do you get money out of politics? It's so baked into the system. It just feels impossible to do it. And for me, the other part of it is to get parties out of the system for me, because, I wrote an article yesterday, actually, about factionalism. And one of the things that George Washington talked about at his farewell speech was about the dangers of factionalism, because the minute that you have factions, people are more invested in keeping their status and keeping their turf than they are in the nation as a whole, than they are in the wellness of the people. And so that's what's going on right now. You have both parties that are more interested in retaining their clout and retaining their power than they are in actually doing the job of the people. So what takes the backseat all the time is what we care about. They're using our pains and our struggles and the burns that we all go through, whether you're Black, white, Latino, woman, gay, straight, all these identities that they're using for their own agendas. They're using all of our struggles as a marketing plan in order to get elected. And then the minute they get to DC, they forget about it. So somehow, if we don't figure out how to get some money out of politics, at least money that's coming freely from corporations, from unaccounted people, dark money that keeps flooding our electoral process, and vote for policies instead of personalities, then nothing's going to change. We've been at this since the 70s, since the 80s, before that. Every time we talk about revolutions and nothing happens, the status quo remains. So it's on us to affect the change. We can't depend on people. There's if you're at a blackjack table and you keep hitting 21 all the time, would you ever ask the dealer to be changed? You won't, because you're winning. So why are we expecting people that are winning at a blackjack table to ask for a new deal? We're the ones losing all the time. The change is going to have to come from us.
Absolutely. Right on. That's, that's also what's so interesting is to see people defend this label that when I was growing up, I just thought it was a word on a voter registration card. I didn't think it was like your identity and everything that's just beautiful and wonderful about you is if you have this D next to your name. If you don't, you have no credibility. Like, how do you, I don't know what you're registered, and I'm a very proud independent. So when people say vote blue no matter who and stuff, I'm just like, delete.
Oh
I'm done.
I know. It's like, but seriously, it's like saying stay with your husband no matter how he treats you. It's inviting abuse. The minute that you say you're 100% loyal, it means you're 100% going to get neglected. So, but as far as my politics, I'm not even going to lie to you. This year was the first year I haven't voted in electoral politics. I mean, in presidential campaigns since I became a citizen in '96. Up until that time, I was solid blue. I mean, I think that might have, by accident, I might have voted for a Republican once. And then when I realized, I said, oh my God, I voted for a Republican. Like, it was like a grave mistake. But now I see it like the idea of voting for a label and not inspecting the policies. It is really like it's turned us into a cult of personalities. It doesn't matter, what their team is, their team orientation. The other day, Donald Trump said Mitt Romney is not a team player, and there's something refreshing about Donald Trump's stupidities, because he actually manages to speak the truth of the brokenness of our system beyond, his right below his narcissism. There's truth in advertisement, but that's what they do. They're more loyal to the institution that they're serving than they are to the people that they're supposed to be serving. So, like I said, I don't know if we could ever get, we're so conditioned as a people to vote for party and to vote for personalities. I just don't know if there's going to be enough of a groundswell of people that says, I've had enough of this. I'm not voting for you just because you could drink beer with me, or, you seem like you're a cool person. Yeah, it's just, would you pick a doctor because he drinks the same beer as you? When you go and try to find a doctor that's going to operate on you, you're going to find out what school he went to, what his reviews are from his peers, from his other his other patients. You're trying to do as much investigative journalism as possible to find out what that person's about. And politicians have as much power over our lives, if not even more so, to be honest with you, as doctors do, because they're implementing policies that could either make our lives a little bit easier economically, or they could lead to the destruction of the middle class, like we've seen, the impoverishment of the poor, the continued impoverishment of the poor, and the demolishment of the working class. And this, both parties are complicit. Both parties. And in fact, in some ways, Democrats are even more complicit, because they, using the guise of social justice, they keep passing policies that are really catered to the wealthiest 1%. At least with the Republicans, what you're getting. They tell you they're not for you. There's truth in their advertisement, but you listen to the rhetoric of these various politicians on the left, and they make it seem like they're for you, and then the minute they get to DC, we get outraged about Donald Trump passing a $1.5 trillion tax cut for the wealthy, which it is outrageous. I'm not going. There's no ways around it. It is the people that have been benefiting like crazy for the past 10 years and really for the past 100 years before that. They get a tax cut the size of which is unimaginable, and then the rest of us get pocket change. But if you're outraged about that, quantitative easing, zero interest rate policy, these economic these monetary policies that were passed under Obama dwarfs the tax cuts of from 2 years ago. By some counts, up to $14 trillion was transferred from the bottom 90% to the top 0.01%. That's why there's such a gap between the wealthiest 0.1% and the rest. while there's 8 people that own as much wealth as the bottom 40% of Americans combined. That's just sickening. So both parties are complicit in this, but where Republicans cannot pass because they don't have they can't muster the votes or the support of Americans. The Democrats are passing for them. Republicans come up with the evil plans. The Democrats somehow push them through, and so we have to wake up to this hustle. It's a scam that's being perpetuated upon us, and until we stop being loyal to parties and being driven by cult of personality, then we get 2 parties that act for the oligarchy while they pretend to be speaking for us.
Is it possible to overcome cult of personality with social media?
That's a hard question because social media is almost catered towards a cult of personality.
It really is.
Yeah, you get somebody, I do it myself too. Somebody follows me and has 120 followers. I'm like, oh, okay. Somebody follows me has 100,000. I'm like, oh, wow. It's like, what does it matter though? These things are so superficial. The quantity of one's followers has nothing to do with the quality of somebody's outlooks or the quality of somebody's belief systems. But, I remember 2 years ago, I went to a synagogue and the rabbi was talking about how we want to be next to famous people because we want to be famous by derivative. So we take pictures with the president or we take pictures with some Hollywood star, and then we post it immediately because we think that we're going to become famous by derivative. And that's what we're ultimately doing. That's the cult of personality at the end of the day. It's really a way to kind of fill the hopes that we have of wanting to be famous too. So by latching on to somebody famous, we get a taste of what fame is about too. But when famous people are doing that, when they revel in personality, cult of personalities, they're getting paid for it. We suffer for it. There's a cost that we bear. So I think the only way that, for me, the way I kind of snapped out of it was because I went through a lot of hardship. So it's unfortunate. It sounds kind of dreary to say this, but maybe when enough hardship and enough adversity comes at us, that's what's going to snap out of it. Because until comfort in a way has a way of breeding complacency. So I hope it doesn't get to that point, but it seems like that's the only way that we're going to snap out of this coma that we've been in for the past, I don't know how many years.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, there's a lot of people posting comments like, where do we get our yellow vest? Come on, we can do this. And I'm like, okay, let's just be real, though. The number one time our country gets together is for the Women's March. It's one day a year. People dress up in costumes and they never get off their couch again for the rest of the year. How do you see our country coming up and just swarming government offices in yellow vests? I don't see that as feasible. What do you think that we could do to inspire more people to actually start caring about things that may not necessarily affect themselves? I think
in a way, this is exactly why these labels that we've been conditioned to accept are so perilous or so lethal in a way, because they get in the way of what the man next to you, what the woman next to you, what they share, and in terms of your struggles and the adversities that you go through. So as long as you say, hey, I remember I went to a women's march in Colorado 2 years ago. And I'm an outspoken supporter. I love supporting women. Because, to be honest with you, I can't wait for a woman to be president. Not Hillary, though. like actually, it's not just based on the identity, but, women have the quality of compassion that too many times men lack. And I'm not trying to say 100%, by the way. I'm not trying to paint us as being having no empathy either. But I say that to give context to this protest I went to in Fort Collins. So I was there. I was actually recording that event as well. And at one point, this a woman took to the mic, and she was like, "And these effing men," and she starts railing at like how men are this, and I was like, but like at that exact moment saying, I got offended. So I was like, if I got offended, What, like, you can't look at these things through a sectional prism. You have to find a way to stitch together a coalition of people that are struggling just like you. So if you're approaching justice through the narrow prism of just identity, whether that's just through race, just through gender, just through orientation, just through religion, or just through political ideology, you're disregarding untold number of millions who could be right next to you. And so, you know, the reason that the Yellow Vest movement in France was so powerful was because they latched on to an external symbol, and that became the unifying rally, right? So it wasn't about, you know, French women, French Africans, or French immigrants, French. It became about just the Yellow Vest, and the Yellow Vest represented inequality, and the tiredness that the French people felt of the status quo. And if you just believe in that Yellow Vest, then you were part of the movement. It kind of reminded me, like with the way that the Black Panther Party rose to power during the 60s. They had like I think it was a 5-point plan or a 10-point plan. I want to say it was a 10-point plan. And they said these 10 things, if you believe in these 10 things, and it was, I don't remember exactly what the 10 things are off the top of my head, but they're like, if you believe in community empowerment, if you believe in equality, and if you believe in 10 specific bullet points, then you're a part of our movement. It doesn't matter if you are a man or woman, black or white, if you're a communist or cap, if you're a lawyer or a doctor, it doesn't matter what you do, who you are, just believe in these 10 things and everything else falls into place. And so what that does is that it serves as a unifying voice until we get to that point where we say we have, maybe even reduce it down further, because the more things you add on, the more people might potentially walk away from. Say, if you believe in these 3 things, equality of opportunity, fairness and income distribution, and healthcare as a right. If you believe in these 3 things, no matter what other position that you are, take a moratorium on these other wedge issues for the time being, because these wedge issues are only going to get worse and worse the more income inequality becomes more pervasive. So if you believe in these 3 things, then you're a part of our movement. Until we get to that some type of a crystallizing moment, then we're going to keep being fractured and fractured and fractured, and politics in that way becomes our crack, because we keep getting the sugar high of it, and it serves as a narcotic to make us forget about the true sources of injustice.
Absolutely. If you could pick a woman president, who would be ideal?
You? Like, for me, I say that only half jokingly, but for me, I can't get to the point where why do we have to always look at people that are famous? You know, there's a working mother somewhere in Illinois, or somewhere in the state of Washington, or somewhere in Virginia, that busts her ass every day, and she takes care of her house, she takes care of work, and then she who knows, on the weekends she's in all kinds of groups and community groups, and and why can't she be president? Is it based on experience? What Donald Trump has experienced? He managed to go in there and destroy everything within 2 years. So experience to me in that, and to be honest with you, experience in perpetuating the same things that we keep getting outraged about, experience in declaring more wars, experience in exasperating the income inequalities. These are experiences that we don't want. Maybe we want somebody that is less experienced. So in this way, experience becomes a disqualifier instead of a qualifier. And so for me, I can't look at somebody that's famous or well known. I'd rather have somebody that that resembles the struggles that we all go through. At the folks at the bottom of 90%, the struggles of worrying about, well, am I going to be able to keep up with the rent, or am I going to be able to feed my, these things that we all go through. Somebody that's making $100 million. Nancy Pelosi is worth $100 million. Do you think she knows our struggles? I think they said that over 250 people in Congress are millionaires. Do you think millionaires, and I'm not trying to start a class warfare. And by the way, it's not even fair to say class warfare. The class warfare has been declared a long time ago. We're the victims of it. Somebody that says stop when they're getting robbed is not class warfare. They're trying to defend themselves. So for me, I prefer somebody that is unknown. And we have social media on our side. We have the tools to really rally behind somebody that's unknown. Why do we have to keep, the thing that I really find saddening about social media, by the way, is that it is, in fact, has gone into this cult of personality. We could have used this tool to really galvanize people around specific issues, and we could elect somebody that is, in fact, somebody completely on the outside. Somebody that shares our struggles and the journeys that we go through. So for me, if it's a woman, I'm not even going to put a name. I'm going to say somebody that works every day, that struggles to maintain I'm not going to say struggle, but that's laboring. That somebody that knows what it's like to go through the struggles that we all go through. So that woman is a worker at Days Inn. So let it be. I'd rather have her than a billionaire that is declaring bankruptcies to get over on people like her.
Absolutely. When Bernard Sanders was running, he would have been the first non-millionaire or billionaire in decades to be president. That's gross. That's so disgusting. And that's one of the good things about 2018. We did have a lot of so-called real people running, people who were never in politics before. I interviewed people who worked at diners and stuff like that. That's who we need. That's who.
True.
So I think you're right on.
Well, I'm hoping, though, that within that, for me, if the institutions, so people are never greater than the institutions that they're serving, right? So if the merry-go-round of faces changes and the institution stays intact, and then the institutions are the ones that are. So there's a reason why Nancy Pelosi got elected today as Speaker of the House, because she's a part of the institution. She's part of the kingmakers or queenmakers of the institution, right? So unless the institution is somehow shaken, then electing new faces becomes nothing more than a facelift. Well, underneath that facelift is nothing but the same thing that remains in place. So, like I said, this is a hard. In a lot of ways, it becomes almost impossible. But for me, I really hope we get to a point. There was something I thought maybe the people galvanized around this over the summertime, and I was trying to start like a 50-state campaign where you outlaw political parties, and it could be done, by the way, because if I wanted to run for office, I can't put on there Teodrose Fikre. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to use your name, right? So if I can't use an identifier that's not part of my name, they could also banish political parties as an affiliation on state ballots. So outlaw state ballots and then make the order of that your name shows up on the ballots randomized, because a lot of times people never get past the first two options. So just that alone becomes an overwhelming advantage to incumbents because they're listed first, and they're challenging because they're listed second. That by itself almost becomes an overwhelming advantage that prevents true outsiders from being a part of the election process or being a part of the governance process. So strip away the party affiliation and then randomize names on the ballots. That could have a sea change. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but somehow, if we don't get to the point where people are voting based on the policy positions, based on the ideas that politicians are putting forth, and they're instead voting for political parties, nothing will change. Like in the 70s, we had a wave of candidates that said that, we're going to have a new day. Anything changed? It happened in the 80s. I remember the year of the woman in soccer moms or whatever it was. Nothing changes. And so somehow we have to get to a point where parties and personalities, but like I said, it gets to be disheartening sometimes, because it's almost like saying we need to remove the eggs from a cake that's already been made. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, cult of personality, identity politics. This is, I want a woman. The thing you see Kamala propped up a lot. But I'm doing an upcoming show with two activists of color, and we're going to discuss her history with making profit on imprisoning Black and brown people. And so many people don't know this or don't care. I'm not sure. But I know seeing these identity politics when they're not good people is frustrating as hell. Right. So how do you respond to that? Do you just try to ignore it, or do you just educate them like, dude, you need to look deeper because no.
So for me, like so even today, right before came about an hour ago, I was like, okay, I need to write, because I was watching MSNBC. I don't know why. I don't know why I watched it. I know it's unhealthy, but I watched it. What? I was watching MSNBC. Now, like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this to my blood pressure and my? This is not healthy. That's funny because I used to watch that all the time religiously. Like I was a Rachel Maddow fan. Now I watch. I'm like, I can't believe I used to fall for this Fox News with a makeover. But no, so I actually wrote about an article just today, like about an hour and a half ago, called The Diversity Hustle. Diversity is a great thing, but diversity, if it's being shared by the diverse broad of humanity, so I don't really care if somebody becomes a CEO of Coca-Cola, and she happens to be a gay woman or a Latino Muslim. Who cares? If her advancement does not represent the advancement of the people that she supposedly represents, then it's just nothing but a scam. So we had to get to a point, just because they look like you, Mary Antoinette, when she said, let them eat cake, she was a woman. Did that make life any better for the tens of millions of French women that were struggling back before the French Revolution? Idi Amin was, grotesque leader of Uganda. Just because he was Black, does that mean that he represented the interest of Africa? Like the makeup of people at the top, if that doesn't have a direct translation to whether or not the lives of the masses are being, made better, then we're just, again, it goes right back into the cult of personality. And, it becomes very lethal to us because we're accepting a system that's utterly, full of inequalities, but we think that we're making progress just because different faces are being paraded before us, but the status quo remains intact. So again, we had to get beyond personalities and political ideologies and really inspect what is being done in our name.
Absolutely. And you would think people would want someone to set a good precedent. Yeah, we all want a woman president, but do we want one who is completely like a warmonger and racist and married to a rapist? And you know what I mean? Like, why is that a good precedent?
Right. Imagine during in the 30s, they I don't know, by the way. So actually, based on history, Hitler was half Jewish, right? Imagine if he rose to fame and said, "Oh, great day for Jewish Americans," and they fell for it. It doesn't matter what you say or who you. No, it's what your policies are. So do we judge him based on what he did or what he was? It's what you do that matters. And so we judge Hitler rightly for the monster that he was, because he killed millions of Jews and millions more throughout the world. It's not because of who he was. That who he was does not give cover to what he did. And so it's the same thing. And so to lesser extents, when Hillary says, "Oh, it's a new day for women," well, we're supposed to overlook the fact that she was part of the same group that gave a green light to the Iraq War. That, I mean, to this day, I can't get that image out of my head when they told her that Gaddafi was just brutally assassinated and the things that were done to him, and she sat there and cackled.
He died.
I was like, oh my God, this is the apex of a sociopath right before us. People don't respond like that unless they're mentally disturbed. And so she's supposed to represent the compassion and empathy of women just because she happens to share some traits of womanhood. That's crazy, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Right on. When do people ever, I know being an independent, you know, in independent media is difficult. When I write articles, I know I'm going to get some hate. I know, because I'm very outspoken like you. So do you get kind of, you know, verbally attacked sometimes because your articles are really outspoken. There's a lot of people in the comments who love them. Do you find that Democrats disagree with you more, or?
You know, to be honest, so far, knock on wood, the ratio of like hateful comments has been very minimal. I'm kind of surprised because you're going at people's belief systems. You know, it's like the third rail of politics. It's not Social Security only. There's all kinds of little rails within that, and part of that is just talking about people's, you know, the what they grew up believing, what they've been conditioned to see the world through. And when you come knocking at that door, then people react violently to it. But I think because I don't approach it from a partisan perspective, and I kind of, and I'm not trying to be like a false equivalence, by the way. I'm not, when I, for example, condemn Trump in the same breath that I condemn Democrats, it's not because I'm trying to race towards equivalency. It's because I really do see them as equally heinous. So I can't talk about any particular issue without pointing out the fact that the other side is doing the same thing. And because of that, and because I'm kind of being fair in my assessment, the ratio of hateful emails or comments has been kind of minimal. But I know, you know, the more you get noticed, and the more you draw the attention of people, there's going to be a day where that's going to turn around. That's part of that.
Yeah, we have 122,000 followers, just a heads up. But we only get maybe one troll a show, maybe. So I think you're good.
You know, but you know, to be honest with you, I appreciate that too, in a way, because I'm not trying to just preach to the choir. You know, ultimately, what I want to do is get people that, you know, because there was a time where I was, you know, I'm not trying to say I know it all, first and foremost. But I know that there's people that spoke like me that I used to just dismiss a long time ago, when I was very partisan and when I was very ideological. But there's certain things that they said that I look back on now and say, you know, wow, that person was right. So I'm trying to, you know, reach out to people that once thought like me. So disagreements in that way, unless they get very heated and just, you know, become incendiary, then I look forward to engaging in discussions, and that's what we're missing anyways. You know, the other part of social media is that is leading us to the ghettos of groupthink more and more, and so we keep being drawn and gravitate to people that just think exactly like us, and there's no growth in people just echoing what you're saying, and then you echo what they're saying. There's nothing to be learned from that. So I look forward to actually people disagreeing with me and having a conversation and a civil debate. And if once in a while, you know, there's people that end up becoming, you know, hateful and they come at tirades, then you know, you have to take that with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point, because we have to expand what we believe in. We're gonna have to talk to people who don't agree with us on everything, and plus it's boring, honestly. I don't want to talk to 100 me's. I'd rather, you know, we can teach each other. It's as trite as it sounds. One of the things that we're seeing online, and I know you're seeing it too, is, you know, putting facts is attacking. It's this word attacking.
It's a slur. You know, oh my you talking about what somebody voted, oh my God, you're attacking me. No, I'm actually saying what you said, you know. So
yes. So like you you know, you drop a comment that is literally like, you don't even personally comment, you just drop something that shows Beto's voting record.
Right.
You are a Bernie bot attacking.
Right. Yeah.
So
but that gets me very disheartening because we've entered into an age of, it's been like this for a while anyways, but because of social media and because it's so much easier to bash people through online than it is in person, then it really has become a politics of destruction. And so it's getting harder and harder to have a conversation with people unless they, even with people that, you know, you agree 90% with, sometimes if you just deviate a little bit from the orthodoxy that they're used to, they bash you as an apologist of this or a bot of that, and it becomes impossible to have a conversation like this. By the way, if I could rewind back to what you said, though, the importance of still maintaining that conversation is that there's a breakthrough possible. Because, like, now, I've wrote about this a lot in the past, but about 2 years ago, I went through a lot of hardship, and I was actually staying at a mission at one point in Greenville, South Carolina. And so one day I ran into this guy, you know, looked like he was a skinhead, and I was like, man, you know, initially I was like, I want to just say F him and just move on. But at one point, we were both outside smoking a cigarette, and I was like, let me just talk to him. So I started talking to him. And up until that moment, every time that we ran into each other, it was just full of, I could just feel the animosity that hit towards me. And so I just talked to him about what I went through, my life, my journey as an immigrant from Ethiopia, and the things I went through in my life. And then he actually apologized. He's like, well, I've never had a conversation with a black guy before. Everyone I've hated up until this point, it was always based on this idea of who they were. And you're the first human being that I've talked to. And he actually apologized. And so people that you think are unredeemable can be redeemed through conversations. Conversations have a way of melting away hatred, melting away antipathy and indifference. And if you just do the small part, and by the way, even if you talk to 100 people, if 99 of them still retain their same hatred for you, if you change one person's heart, that's enough. You know, that's change we could believe in. Not change from politicians, but the changes that we could do based on being civil and compassionate towards one another.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps. That's amazing. That's so awesome. And now, you know, it's all relative because now he's going to tell his friends, hey, look, I met this black guy and he was really awesome, and so on and so on. And so, yeah, I have goosebumps. That's amazing.
It really is. By the way, for me, one of the reasons I was so dispirited by the Obama campaign, what it became, because he was actually talking these things. I remember one of the speeches he gave where he said that change happens block by block, city by city, until it envelops the whole nation. And I believe that. I remember what I said earlier about being hoodwinked, being duped. I was big, but that's because these are the things I believe, and it really is possible to really transform society based on not one big bang, and it's just incremental things that we do. The incremental acts of kindness could lead to a transformation of society. But we're so hooked on looking up and being enveloped by politics that we forget about the small things. And so we go and protest and do hashtag and all that while we're stepping over homeless people, while we're stepping over broken people right in front of us. We're protesting injustices that are thousands of miles away. And so affect change locally. If every one of us do that, then everything else kind of change by that's the derivative that could actually work in our favor. Not being famous by derivative, but by impacting change, and then those changes impact the change by derivative as well.
Absolutely. Like, you're resisting, now what? Right. Okay, is he not still passing these bills? Because I feel like he is.
He's passing them with the help of Democrats.
Yeah, hey, the $700 billion war budget increase, that was just, how come every Dem voted for it?
Right.
Bernard and like 3 Republicans didn't. Right. Every Dem did.
It goes back to the institution. Gross. You know, if you can't somehow shake up the institution and loosen the grip that it has on the governance of America, then nothing's going to get done. And so we if we keep doing this, I think it was Einstein. If you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, that is the definition of insanity. We've gone beyond insanity to just straight out lunacy, because we keep every 4 years, we've been convinced that voting is an ends. It's not an ends, it's a means. The end has to be different than just going and pulling a ballot box, a ballot, and leave on in an election booth and walking away. That is not the end. That is the means. And if one means doesn't work, then you find another and another. But we've been conditioned to believe that voting is in itself is an end. And that is exactly what has gone to the point where we have a duopoly that has monopolized power. And so nothing changes. Nothing changes until we somehow shake that up. And so, part of that is to do more to empower ourselves where we live, build up our communities, and that, by the way, that's not espousing the virtues of states' rights, like during the 50s and 60s,
Right.
I'm talking about seriously, community empowerment is what the Black Panther Party was talking about, what every time that there's been a group that kind of rose and that got crushed by the status quo is because they were trying to empower the community. So do our parts where we live. And if every one of us commit to that, by shopping locally, by supporting people that are struggling locally, by doing what we can to spend more of our resources where we live. That's hard because, it's easy to go on Amazon. I sell my book at Amazon, you can't even get away from these things. But at least for every dollar that you spend, at a corporation, if you find a way to spend it locally, these things can have a tremendous impact. And so it's on us.
Absolutely. I feel like you're calming some of my insecurities of feeling like I'm the only one who feels like this.
We exist.
Like, oh my God, I'm not the only one with these thoughts. And also, speaking of Black Panthers, Free Mumia, hopefully that fingers crossed. But anyway, I digress. So who are some of your heroes, be it journalistic or civil rights, anything like that? Who do you admire?
So, of course, Malcolm X for me was a big icon, social icon that I used to look up to. But even that, it changed, right? Because up until what I went through, what I admired about him the most was his rebellious militancy, and because the history books never really talked about the latter stages of his life. But then when I went through going through a bout of hopelessness and seeing the brokenness of humanity, I had my own kind of Mecca moment that Malcolm X had. He had his Mecca moment in Mecca. Mine was in missions in South Carolina and in Colorado, for example. And what he saw a broad sea of humanity, a diversity of humanity, worshiping together. I saw a diversity of humanity broken together. But in the end, what changed him was because he realized that the struggle is not necessarily about race or gender, about these identities. It's truly about the powerful versus the rest who are being crushed by the powerful. So he started talking about these things. He started talking about income inequality. He started talking about that he's for anyone that's for justice and that's standing up for truth. So for me, the reason why I'm drawn to him now a lot more so than even before is because the transformation that he has, where he got rid of his militancy and looking at things only through the limited lens of race and looking at it from a human perspective. And Martin Luther King was the same way as well. Initially, he was all about the civil rights, but by the very end, he started actually talking about income inequality, about humanism as a whole, about the powerful versus. And by the way, they both mysteriously died at the hands of assassins. And if you really just only think it was those assassins, that there were not wider figures beyond that, and that they didn't die. They died because they actually chose to be a lot more precise in terms of what the true sources of injustices are. For me, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X are two lions. Modern day, like in contemporary times, Cornell West, Chris Hedges, one is a journalist, the other one's a political activist, and they talk. Even though sometimes they do, but for the most part, they don't stick to just ideology. They don't stick to just identity. They talk about issues that are cross culture, cross races, and that really get at exactly what the sources of injustices are. So that, in our contemporary times, that's who I look up to as well.
I met Brother Cornell last year.
One more, by the way. Angela Davis was another big one for me. Angela Davis, I had to say that because when I read Angela, like I talk about the Black Panther Party, people really had this misconception about what they were about. It was not the guns that made them powerful. It's because they were feeding people. They were trying to empower people. The guns was the last thing that the government feared. It was because they were actually trying to take care of people on the ground. And Angela Davis was one of the pioneers when it came to that. And if anyone that hasn't read the autobiography of Angela Davis, highly suggested. So, sorry to cut you off. I just forgot.
Oh, no, that's okay. I get to meet a lot of people when I go places to, conferences and events, but I've only fangirled twice, and one of them was Brother Cornell. I started bawling.
Right.
Sister Joy, and oh my God, I just lost it. I just love that man so much. He's just amazing. Someone has a question about Ajamu Baraka. Sure. Do you like him, support him?
I do. I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know as much about him as I do, for example, about Cornell West or Chris Hedges, because I read them all the time or I listen to all the time. But I follow him on social media, pay attention to what he says, and I appreciate the fact that he also doesn't hold his tongue when it comes to. For me, what I respect are people that don't kowtow to ideology or don't kowtow to a specific demographic. It's a hustle for a lot of times. People that pretend to be social justice warriors, they're actually talking to a specific group of people. And really, that's their way of raising money and status by talking to those specific demographics. And so Ajamu does not do that. He actually, he talks about what the issues are, irrespective of political party, irrespective of identity. So I appreciate that about him as well. Anyone that does that. There's a lot of other people, too, that even, journalists. Matt Taibbi, I used to read him, but at some point I was very skeptical about mainstream journalists. And then, oh, bless you.
Okay, I'm good. Yeah, but I think a lot of people are with you with that, with Matt.
Yeah. So he does that as well. So for me, my respect is for anyone that doesn't hold their tongue when it comes to, Warren comes out yesterday, and Elizabeth Warren was like, oh, these Republicans, and I was like, off. I turned it off immediately because I knew she's not going to talk about her side of the aisle or what her side does. She's only going to point. So anyone that points finger one way and doesn't point the finger back at all, and including themselves, because we're all guilty of this as well. And if we don't hold ourselves accountable as well in the process, we become equally hypocritical in this as well. So that's what I look for, and it's hard to find, but you just have to keep looking.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely want you to read the comments after we get off the air, because you are definitely getting a lot of love. And there's a couple questions in there we couldn't get to. But what would you like to leave our audience with?
But first and foremost, let me say thank you to everyone that's tuning in. I see some of the commenters like Lucy LeBron. I wonder if she's related to LeBron James. Probably not, right? And John, and everyone else that's contributing to the conversation, thank you as well, and thank you for having me as well. It's like I said, it's always good to connect and collaborate, and this is how we get heard, and we get the issues that we care about heard, because we, as individuals, we have nothing, and we have no power when it comes to the billions of dollars that's being freely spent by Jeff Bezos and his group of billionaires. But if each one of us connect, we can match the money of the oligarchy. Our voices are just as powerful, and we just have to connect each other and collaborate as opposed to competing with each other. So, I guess that's what I want to leave it with. Let's, as we move forward, all of us, instead of competing and bickering, find ways to be collaborative and to find common ground with people that, and just like the guy in South Carolina, I thought I wanted to dismiss as a skinhead racist and walk away. And really, when I had a conversation with him, it became a moment of, a moment that I'm going to look back on and really, doing my own hardship, look at it as a redemptive moment for me and for him. There's moments we could have, each one of us, like that. And with enough of those small ripples, it becomes a big wave. So that's the wave. It's not a blue wave.
Yes.
It's a human wave.
It's a wave of humanity.
A human wave. That's a hashtag. Human wave.
I like it. Well, thank you so much. Again, you were freaking awesome. And thank you to the people who also recommended him. Guys, check out his writing. It is freaking amazing. My teammate posted links to it, so you can click right on there. I'm sure you have a Patreon.
Yeah,
I would guess. Okay.
Type in Ghion Journal, and also it's on our website as well. If you scroll down, there's ways to get to it as well. So thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I have some really good shows coming up. I am freaking out because I have Mike from Humanist Report on the 9th, and you will definitely see me fangirl at that point. But then I have another person coming on who is a special guest, and no, it's not Bernie, but I'll announce that in a few days when we get the date and time settled. So thank you guys again for watching. Thank you again for joining us. You are freaking awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a
Absolutely. Take care.
All right.